Did your wide receivers suck so bad in week 4 that you literally thought they were interviewing for an internship with Bill Clinton rather than playing NFL football? Well, you're not alone. A lot of stud wide receivers sucked last week in week 4. So who can we trust here in week 5? Let's talk starts and sits wide receivers right now. What is going on, Headliner Nation? Jake Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully you're all doing well out there. Welcome back to the Draft.com studios, where today we're talking about ball catchers. That's right, the wide receiver position for week 5 fantasy football. Who we starting and who are we sitting? But like usual, full transparency, here we go. How did we do in week 4? I'm not going to lie to you. We absolutely sucked at the wide receiver position, but it wasn't entirely our fault. There were a lot of big name guys that totally crapped the bed on us here in week 4. These are guys that are basically weekly must-starts. If you have them, you more than likely don't have better options. Look at some of these names: Julio Jones, Keenan Allen, DeAndre Hopkins, Odell Beckham, Brandon Cooks, Amari Cooper, heck, Tyler Lockett against the Arizona Cardinals even, Adam Thielen, and all of the Kansas City wide receivers. They ended up being misses for us this week. They could not get in to the double digits in the half-point PPR scoring. Heck, they were outscored by the likes of A.J. Brown and Corey Davis, both wide receivers of the Tennessee Titans, also outscored by Trevor Davis. I'm willing to bet a lot of you guys out there don't even know who the heck Trevor Davis is. Miles Boykin and Devontae Parker, fantasy Bigfoot himself, actually outscored these big names. That's 11 players there under the must-start column that I had to count as a miss in week 4. So that really hurt the accuracy percentage. So going into the week 4 numbers here for the wide receivers, we did have a few good hits. There was a lot of question marks about a few of these guys: Kenny Golladay, Jarvis Landry, Chris Godwin, Robert Woods. We all had listed as starts last week, and they had great games. However, out of the 63 wide receivers that we gave a start-sit designation to, only ended up with 32 correct. That's 51%. If we would have added in the 11 studs that totally bombed on the slide before, it would have bumped up our percentage to 68%. Really paints a different picture, but we really can't sit those big names. Do I hate taking a miss on those? Abso-freaking-lutely. But you know what? Full transparency, had them listed as a start. They didn't get that 10-point cutoff. They're a miss. But for the week, not overly bad here for the channel. Me and Kyle both rated inside the top 38 on Fantasy Pros for our fantasy football accuracy for our week 4 rankings. There's 153 people total. Kyle finished 32nd overall. I finished 38th overall. So both of us there inside the top 40. And this is for the overall rankings for all the positions here for week 4. So still a pretty solid week overall. These big name guys, they got to step it up a little bit though. I do not want this many misses on so many big names here in week 5. But there's our full transparency. Let's head into week 5 and see what we're starting and what we're sitting in all these matchups here coming up this weekend. Thursday Night Football, Rams and Seahawks up first. And at this point, it's almost too hard to sit any of the trio of wide receivers for the Los Angeles Rams. Cooper Kupp, Brandon Cooks, Robert Woods, their ceilings are through the roof. As of right now, they're all in the top 30 in fantasy points scored for the position. They're in the top 30 rankings of almost every site every single week. It's just somebody that you need to have in your lineup, a piece of this offense. And right now, Cooper Kupp seems to maybe be the safest option out of the trio. He's got a huge ceiling, but he's also got that high floor. So if you have Cooper Kupp, he's an obvious must-start. It's a difficult matchup, though, this week, going up against the Seattle Seahawks, only allowing 20 fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. That's 5th best in the NFL, so it is a difficult matchup. But like I said, you can't afford to sit any of these guys in an offense that's going to throw the ball a lot. All these guys can help you win your fantasy matchup on any given week. Now for Seattle, Tyler Lockett is going to remain a start once again, just because he had a down week last week against the Arizona Cardinals, which is crazy because not a lot of people have down weeks against the secondary of the Arizona Cardinals. But Tyler Lockett only had 4 catches for 51 yards. But don't be fooled. Remember, this is the same Rams defense that last week allowed Jameis Winston to throw for 385 yards and 4 touchdowns. I mean, Jameis Winston looked like an absolute goat out there last week, and that was on this same Rams defense. Can the Seattle Seahawks put up the same type of production? Probably not to that level, but Tyler Lockett is their number 1 option in the passing game. DK Metcalf, I like where he's headed in his career. Still a little bit too inconsistent to trust fantasy-wise, so he's going to remain in the sit column. But Tyler Lockett, just because he had a bad week, don't throw him to your bench. Keep him in your starting lineup. Jags and Panthers up next, and this is a tough one because, I mean, on paper, this looks like it could be a pretty good matchup for the Carolina Panthers wide receivers. I mean, as of right now, the Jacksonville Jaguars are giving up 27.2 fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. And it doesn't sound like Jalen Ramsey is anywhere near the football field at this point. Where I have my concerns, though, is Kyle Allen. Not so much with his play at quarterback, but can he really supply two solid wide receiver twos in that offense? I mean, Christian McCaffrey is just eating up touches left and right, and Curtis Samuel and DJ Moore are kind of fighting for the scraps. So far, through 2 weeks with Kyle Allen under center, Curtis Samuel has out-targeted DJ Moore 14-7. It seems like he's the more favorite target, or the more favored target, I guess you could say, of Kyle Allen. It makes him a little bit safer. The volume is there, gives him a slightly safer floor. So I'm going to go ahead and start Curtis Samuel this week. I'm going to sit DJ Moore, though. I think at this point, he's somewhat touchdown dependent, big play dependent. If he doesn't get it, he's going to sink your fantasy team. No better options, a flex play at best possibly for DJ Moore in those deeper leagues. Now, as for the Jacksonville Jaguars, I mean, DJ Chark is really the only name that we need to discuss, right? A lot of people want to start DJ Chark, but you kind of saw last week what happens with DJ Chark if he doesn't score touchdowns. It really pisses off fantasy owners if he's in your lineup, and that's not going to change all year. He just doesn't see enough volume. He's going to be more touchdown dependent, and now, more than likely, he's going to draw James Bradberry of the Carolina Panthers, which is not an ideal matchup. Right now, the Panthers, they're the fourth best defense against opposing wide receivers, giving up only 17.5 fantasy points per game. I like DJ Chark. I like the talent. I love Gardner Minshew, but I'm not starting either of these guys here this week. Patriots and Redskins up next, and the Patriots coming off a little bit of a down week, right? At least statistical-wise anyway, against the Buffalo Bills, but now they get rewarded. They get the Washington Redskins defense, who right now is the second worst defense as far as giving up points to opposing wide receivers, giving up 31.9 fantasy points per game. That is a huge number. This is a great way for the Patriots to come back and rebound, but who do we choose here? Who do we feel comfortable with? Julian Edelman, Josh Gordon, Philip Dorsett. Right now, Julian Edelman's still the safer option in this offense. He's Tom Brady's, top target out there in the field. He's got 32 targets through 4 games, and he did miss a little bit of that game week 3 with the rib injury. So the guy's heavily targeted in this offense. The higher touchdown upside, that goes towards Josh Gordon and Philip Dorsett, not so much Julian Edelman. All 3 of these guys are fantasy viable options this week going up against this defense. Julian Edelman, more of that wide receiver 2, safe wide receiver 2 in PPR leagues. Josh Gordon, fringe wide receiver 2. Philip Dorsett, more of a solid flex play with some upside. But any one of these guys has the chance to break a big play or be heavily involved. Love the matchup this week going up against the Redskins. All 3 of them find themselves in the start column. As for the Redskins, not only am I worried, I'm really not all that interested right now, not just because they're going up against one of the best defenses in all of football. Right now, the Patriots are only allowing 12.6 fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers, and there's a good chance that the starting quarterback on Sunday is going to be Colt McCoy. That just does not scream excitement for Paul Richardson or Terry McLaurin owners. Listen, I get it. A lot of people out there love Terry McLaurin. So do I. Love the talent, love the kid, love the upside that he has. But Colt McCoy coming out there as his starting quarterback against one of the best defenses in all of football, I'm kind of off the bandwagon this week. Love McLaurin going forward. Just not going to throw him in the starting lineup this week. Bills and Titans up next, and this is a Bills defense that just shut down the New England Patriots for the most part last week, and Tom Brady only had 150 yards passing, no touchdowns. So does that give you that warm fuzzy on the inside to start Corey Davis or A.J. Brown, 2 highly inconsistent wide receivers in an offense not really known for its passing game, and Marcus Mariota? Yeah, I don't have that warm fuzzy, still not buying into it. Going to sit both Corey Davis and A.J. Brown. Now for the Bills side of the ball, though, this one kind of hinges on the health of Josh Allen. He's in the concussion protocol. If he plays, I don't mind John Brown or Cole Beasley in a flex spot. I mean, these guys are volume dependent. A little bit more big play option there for John Brown. Haven't seen it as of late. Cole Beasley just eating up all the targets underneath. But if Josh Allen sits or does not play in this game, I'm not interested in any of the wide receivers here in this matchup. Josh Allen's on the field. I'll take a small chance there on John Brown or Cole Beasley in my flex spot. I think the volume is there and the safety of the floor is going to be there also. Don't hate it. Just make sure we pay attention to those practice reports. We need Josh Allen on the field here. Ravens and Steelers up next, and this is probably where a lot of people get butthurt in the comment section, but that's okay. The sign over my shoulder says "Falk the haters" for a reason. But we're going to start where everybody's eyes are going to gravitate to, right? Juju, he's sitting in the sit column. Why is Juju in the sit column? People out there probably going, WTF, I spent a first or second round pick on this guy. I'm not going to sit him. And I get that logic. I understand that. But I don't like where this offense is going whatsoever in Pittsburgh. Juju only saw 4 targets last week. 4 against the Cincinnati Bengals. And now all of a sudden this offense has turned into some wildcat using, option using, style offense. A lot of short passes, a lot of check downs to running backs, utilizing the running game more, trying to make it a little bit easier on Mason Rudolph. I mean, Deontay Johnson's kind of looked like a bright spot at times, but he's highly touchdown dependent, just like Juju is at this point. So I'm not comfortable starting either one of these guys for the Pittsburgh Steelers. As for the Baltimore Ravens, I'll start Marquise Hollywood Brown this week. I mean, he's disappointed the last 2 weeks, right? He's had 6 catches and 71 yards combined over the past 2 weeks, but now he gets to go against the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, which is giving up 26.1 fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. That's 10th worst in the NFL, and the volume is still there. Over the last 3 weeks, he's averaged just under 10 targets a game, and as a flex play, I don't hate Hollywood Brown this week. At some point, again, he's going to break a big play, but the volume is there, and that's the key. If he's getting close to 10 targets a week, it only gives him that extra opportunity to break a big play and help your fantasy day. Cardinals and Bengals up next, and they're both battling for the chance to see what a win feels like here in 2019 because they're both winless. As long as this game doesn't end at a tie, somebody's going to be extremely happy at the end of week 5. And as you can see, we got 2 wide receivers who are in the sit column, but they're injured. I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of it. Christian Kirk looks like he's going to be missing some time with an ankle injury. A lot more targets coming the way of Larry Fitzgerald. Keyshawn Johnson all of a sudden becomes somewhat intriguing in deeper leagues. Saw some reports today that Andy Isabella is going to get some more run on the outside here. Both of those guys have some upside in deeper leagues, so those are names to pay attention to. Christian Kirk was getting close to 10 targets a game. They're going to have to go somewhere because they throw the ball a lot in Arizona. John Ross just moved to the IR. He's not somebody that we really need to talk about now going forward. Tyler Boyd had himself a very down week. We kind of saw that coming last week, but he can bounce back this week against a secondary that's still without its top cornerbacks in the Arizona Cardinals. So Tyler Boyd, and a name that you also need to pay attention to, Auden Tate. If he's available in your league and you have a bench spot open, go grab Auden Tate. He is a ginormous human being that can catch footballs very well. He's slowly turning into somebody who's taking away the volume from Tyler Boyd, which really made Tyler Boyd valuable. Auden Tate, more of a flex play in deeper leagues only, but a name that you should be thinking about. Falcons and Texans up next, and this is the battle of Julio Jones and DeAndre Hopkins, 2 of the best wide receivers in football. Julio Jones coming off a little bit of a down week against the Tennessee Titans, and all the owners of DeAndre Hopkins out there going, what the hell's going on with DeAndre Hopkins, right? I mean, people want more production from DeAndre Hopkins, myself included. I hate listing him as a start and having to take him as a miss on a weekly basis here the past few weeks. But you need to stay patient, right? Stay the course. Keep starting DeAndre Hopkins. There would not be a worse feeling in fantasy football if you got so frustrated that you benched DeAndre Hopkins and then he absolutely went off, especially in a matchup against the Atlanta Falcons that just got torched by Marcus Mariota, Corey Davis, and A.J. Brown. You need to be sure to keep starting DeAndre Hopkins. But what about the other pieces here? Kenny Stills is going to be injured, going to be missing some time. That gives a little bit of that big play upside back to Will Fuller. Kiki QT kind of in the mix, but not so much. And Calvin Ridley has been highly inconsistent. At this point, Ridley and Fuller are borderline flex plays for me at best right now. That big play upside from Will Fuller could happen this week going up against that Atlanta Falcons secondary, and I do like the opportunity that he has with Kenny Stills going out. Calvin Ridley, we know the upside is there, right? He just hasn't performed the past couple weeks. I expect for him to bounce back at some point. Another one of those guys that it's hard to sit. If you have better options, I would not blame you for sitting Calvin Ridley. However, given the matchup, I don't hate it as a flex play at best here in week 5. Bucks and Saints up here, and we talked about it in the running back video, right? Both of these stout run defenses can really limit the upside of running backs all around. However, what they can't limit is the passing game. Both of these teams allowing more than 25 points per game to opposing wide receivers this year in fantasy football. Michael Thomas, a lot of people concerned about Michael Thomas because the upside kind of dwindled a little bit once Drew Brees went out. And that's right, that happened. He did lose some value. However, what he didn't lose is the volume. He's still a very safe play in PPR leagues. It's just the upside. It's the ceiling that takes a little bit of a hit. You just can't afford to sit Michael Thomas, though. He's basically getting almost all of the targets that Teddy Bridgewater's throwing down the field. The problem is Teddy Bridgewater isn't throwing the ball down the field very much. Ted Ginn, not an option going forward as long as Teddy B's under center. Now, for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, we saw both Mike Evans and Chris Godwin go crazy over the past couple weeks. Chris Godwin still showing up as a limited practice participant here this week. This could just be some type of a maintenance, procedure to just rest him a little bit going into the weekend. Make sure you're paying attention to the practice reports because you want all three of these guys. Michael Thomas, Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin, they're all elite options once again here in week 5, and I got them all as starts. Vikings and Giants up next. And have you ever heard the saying, squeaky wheel gets the grease? Well, Adam Thielen, he's been squeaking, talking about the offense and having to throw the ball more. Heck, this whole offense has been under fire here for a few weeks, trying to figure out why can they not throw the ball down the field? I mean, Kirk Cousins getting all kinds of hate. Adam Thielen saying, hey, we need to throw the ball more. We need to be more successful. And he's right. If Minnesota wants to do anything here in 2019, they're going to have to figure out what's going on in the passing game, and it's a great opportunity for him here this week. Now, Adam Thielen was a solid option the first 3 weeks of the season. Not quite what a lot of people had hoped for, but still a solid option. The problem was Diggs was non-existent. And then in week 4, total vice versa. Diggs had himself a great week. Adam Thielen, basically non-existent. But now they get the opportunity to go up against the New York Giants. The Giants who give up on average 30.3 fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. That's third most in the NFL. I'm going to start both Thielen and Diggs. I expect something to happen this week with this Minnesota Vikings offense to really make a conscious effort to get the passing game going. They could start early and they could keep their foot on the pedal. I'm starting both Thielen and Diggs this week. Now, for the Giants, it's the return of Golden Tate. He's back with the Giants, but I'd like to give him a week or so. More than likely, he's been stashed at the bottom of your bench in an IR spot. Heck, you maybe just picked him up off of waivers. I want to give him a couple weeks, if possible. If you're decimated with injuries or have no other options at wide receiver, I mean, the volume should be there for Golden Tate. I feel a lot more comfortable, though, starting Sterling Shepard, who's had some great chemistry with Danny Dimes here over the past few weeks. He's got 100 total yards as an average over the last 2 weeks, and he is a solid play going forward, at least as a flex play at worst for Sterling Shepard. The upside is there. The volume is there. Does Golden Tate eat into that? Yeah, possibly a little bit, and may take away a little bit from Evan Ingram. But Sterling Shepard has already built that chemistry, and Danny Dimes has proven that he can throw the ball down the field. Shepard's going to remain a start. I'm going to wait off a week or so on Golden Tate. Let's see how he's utilized before we all of a sudden throw him in there and count on him to win our fantasy football week here in week 5. Bears and Raiders up next, and this one's pretty straightforward. We got Allen Robinson and Tyrell Williams both as starts here in week 5, at least as flex plays. Now, yes, Allen Robinson took a hit in value once they lost Mitch Trubisky. He now has Chase Daniel under center. However, great matchup going up against the Oakland Raiders right now, who give up over 27 points a game to fantasy football wide receivers. Allen Robinson still going to see the volume, still a solid flex play going forward. Tyrell Williams, his yardage has been down, but the touchdown production has been there. 4 straight games with a touchdown. And the Bears defense has proven, even though it's a very solid defense, over the past few weeks that it can give up some big games. Emmanuel Sanders, Stephon Diggs both had great games here against the Chicago Bears. Going to be at home in Oakland. I'd throw Tyrell Williams in a flex spot again if I needed to here for week 5. As far as Anthony Miller and Hunter Renfrow, I don't see either one of those guys getting enough volume to be anywhere near the fantasy lineup as of yet. Anthony Miller has huge upside. I love Anthony Miller, and if this guy can get healthy and they can start to utilize him in this offense, this is a name we're going to talk about second half of the season, so don't forget about him. But as far as week 5 goes, on the sit list. Jets and Eagles up next, and what a wasted matchup for the pass catchers here of the Jets, Jets, going up against the Philadelphia Eagles passing defense, which is the worst secondary in all of football, giving up on average 32.8 points per game to fantasy football wide receivers. But still no Sam Darnold. He's still dealing with the mono. And now we got Luke Falk once again. Do you trust Luke Falk? Falk, no, you don't trust him. I mean, Jamison Crowder isn't out there getting a lot of volume. Robbie Anderson is very much big play dependent, even though I do like him for DFS lineups this week. So if you do any DFS, Robbie Anderson, kind of a sneaky name here in a great situation. Hopefully he can break a big play. But as far as season-long leagues go, I'm not really on the bandwagon. It's still a great matchup, though, for the wide receivers of the Philadelphia Eagles. We don't know if Deshaun Jackson is going to play. Doesn't sound like it, but he hasn't been officially ruled out as of yet. Nelson Aguilar looked great in weeks 2 and 3. Well, at least target-wise, volume-wise, he looked great. And then absolutely disappeared with 1 target in week 4. Why? I mean, the guy wasn't utilized at all, even though Deshaun Jackson wasn't out there either. Right now, Alshon Jeffrey, the most solid option in this passing game, has 3 touchdowns through 4 games. One of the favorite targets of Carson Wentz, not named Zach Ertz. Alshon Jeffrey is definitely a wide receiver in a matchup like this going up against the Jets that I would have no issue starting here in week 5. Broncos and Chargers up next, and I like a lot of pieces here in this game. I mean, Keenan Allen, he's an obvious must-start every single week. Both of these teams giving up over 21 fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers, and Keenan Allen's going to see the volume. We know that going into the game, partially because Mike Williams can't stay healthy. You can see the red cross next to his name again. Until he can be 100% healthy, I'm going to have a hard time throwing him into my lineup and trusting him on a weekly basis. But for the Denver Broncos, I like both of these guys this week. Emmanuel Sanders and Courtland Sutton, this week both have wide receiver 2 upside. I mean, Sanders has 5 or more receptions and at least 86 receiving yards 3 out of the last 4 games. And Courtland Sutton has had double-digit fantasy points 3 out of his 4 games. Both solid options. They're going to have to throw the ball in Denver. They throw the ball a lot more in Denver than we had expected. Both of these guys are somewhat pleasant surprises and decent starts here for me in week 5. Packers and Cowboys up next, and this is the part of the show where all the Devontae Adams owners shed a tear because they don't see his name on the list. There's a good chance he doesn't play, officially not ruled out yet, but won't probably be on the field here this week. So can MVS and Geronimo Allison shoulder the load while he's gone? I mean, it looks like a tough matchup on paper going up against the Dallas Cowboys. Right now, they're only allowing 17.4 fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers, but when you dig a little bit deeper, you can see why those numbers are so great. Listen to the quarterbacks they faced the first 4 weeks of the season. Eli Manning, Case Keenum, Josh Rosen, and Teddy Bridgewater. I don't know about you, but I would take my chances with Aaron Rodgers over any 4 of those quarterbacks that I've named. So I've kind of bumped up MVS and Geronimo Allison to flex plays this week with that wide receiver 2 upside for both of these guys. I think this defense is solid for Dallas, but they haven't faced an offense like this, and I believe in Aaron Rodgers to move the ball down the field a little bit better. Now for Dallas, it doesn't sound like Michael Gallup may miss the game, and there's a chance that he actually plays now. Reports are coming out that he could be out there on the field here this week for week 5. And Amari Cooper is coming off of a down week this past week, but he started off the season hot. Right now, he's in the top 10 in the NFL, averaging 2.54 fantasy points per target. That is a great stat for Amari Cooper. Another one of these matchups, though, that looks tough on paper, going up against the Green Bay Packers. They're only giving up 17.4 fantasy points per game. That's 3rd best in the NFL. But listen to the quarterbacks that these guys have faced. Mitch Trubisky, Kirk Cousins, and Joe Flacco. None of these guys are really, throwing the ball down the field very much. Another option for the Dallas Cowboys, who may be somewhat limited in the running game. Left tackle Tyron Smith is not going to be there. If Zeke is limited at all, they may resort a little bit more to the passing game, especially if Michael Gallup is out there. I actually like, Amari Cooper quite a bit this week for a bounce-back week. He's going to be on the start side here for me in week 5. Colts and Chiefs up next, and now typically this is a matchup where we'd want a lot of pieces. I mean, both of these defenses give up over 20 points to opposing wide receivers. On the Colts side, though, it's really worried about T.Y. Hilton. I mean, there's a good chance he doesn't even play this week. He's in the start column just in case he has some miraculous recovery and is a 100% practice participant by the weekend. I'll start T.Y. Hilton, of course, if he's healthy. I don't think he plays, though, so that's something we need to monitor here throughout the week. But there's really no wide receiver 2 in Indianapolis that's really worth targeting if T.Y. Hilton isn't there. Paris Campbell hasn't really seen consistent volume. Zach Pascal, however you want to say his last name, doesn't really matter. He's borderline, debatable to be owned, much less started. If T.Y. Hilton sits, I'm not starting any of the wide receiver pieces for the Indianapolis Colts. On the Chiefs side, though, this is where it gets interesting once again. Sammy Watkins, Demarcus Robinson, Mecole Hardman, and now Tyreek Hill has returned to practice. Did they say he's going to play this week? No, they have not said that. Would not surprise me if he sits another week or so. The hard part, though, is who do you start out of these trio if Tyreek Hill does not play? It's really difficult to figure out whose week is it going to be. Each of these guys have had a huge week, and they can almost win you your fantasy matchup single-handedly. The problem is you don't know who it is. They're flex plays at best going forward. I expect a bounce-back game for the Chiefs, which is weird to say because they coming off of a win, but still a game in which Patrick Mahomes did not put up huge numbers. I expect the Chiefs to come out hot and heavy at home in Arrowhead, and one of these guys is going to have a big game. I wish I could tell you which one it was. There's just no way to know going forward. Once Tyreek Hill returns, that's all of a sudden when Mecole Hardman and maybe Demarcus Robinson take a backseat to just Sammy and Tyreek. But until that happens, all these guys are in play as possible flex plays here in Week 5. Browns and Niners up next on Monday Night Football, and the 49ers are no slouch of a defense, and they've had a week to prep for this game. But have the Cleveland Browns turned the corner offensively? I mean, last week, 530 total yards against the Baltimore Ravens, and it wasn't even really Odell Beckham that was involved. It was mostly Jarvis Landry who got the bulk of the touches, but now he's in the concussion protocol. We already know that Odell Beckham is a weekly must-start here in this offense. If Landry sits, it's even more of a must-start for Odell Beckham. However, if Landry is cleared, I kind of like him going forward in this game also. I mean, both of these guys have that upside. Jarvis Landry, more of a mid to low end wide receiver too. Odell Beckham, you drafted him first, second round. He's going to be a start for you almost every single week as long as he's healthy with a Baker Mayfield under center. So that's really not, too much of a debate right there. But for the San Francisco 49ers, none of these guys really stand out on a weekly basis. Debo has looked great at times for the San Francisco 49ers. Dante Pettis has disappeared most of the time. Marquise Goodwin, kind of big play dependent. Now they could be getting Tevin Coleman back. There's already 45 running backs in the mix there in San Francisco that are all involved in the passing game. A lot of questions, especially coming out of the bye week here. I'd rather take a week. Let's see how they go forward with this offense in San Francisco before I trust any of these guys in my starting lineup here for Week 5. All right, so those are my starts and sits for the wide receiver position here for Week 5 fantasy football. Maybe you agree with some, maybe you disagree with some. That's fine. If we always agreed, there would be no purpose of you watching this channel. It would get boring. We're supposed to disagree at times. That's what leads to discussions, and that's part of the fun of fantasy football. Not trying to say somebody's smarter than the other person, trying to figure out the best possible way to make a lot of people successful with fantasy football here in 2019. So make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you're new here, and leave a comment down below. Myself, somebody from Headliner Nation, other members of the community are always out there being the most interactive fantasy football channel there is on YouTube right now. So if you want to be a part of that community, make sure you join us. Let us know. Would love to welcome you. Hopefully you guys have a great rest of your week, a successful weekend, and we'll talk to you later.